Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the Recursive podcast, the place where you can meet the leaders, current and future, of the innovation economy here in Bulgaria and Southeast Europe. Our next guest's journey in business has been very versatile and rich. He started as a coder, as he says himself, who turned then into a sales executive, who turned then a startup founder, and then later on an investor. And right now, he's again at a turning point in his career. In between, he made a couple of successful exits. Currently, he's considering a political career, and we will talk a bit more about it. And parallel, I think you're still contributing as a university lecturer and a startup mentor. At the current turning point, he is now running for parliament as part of the newly founded party We Continue the Change, the first ever experiment of the Bulgarian innovation ecosystem leaders and entrepreneurs to fix what has been broken in the Bulgarian political ecosystem. Daniel Laurer, welcome to the Recursive podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
It's a real pleasure. Before we come to the current topics, and I know that they're very serious and they're very important for the future of what's coming ahead of us, I want to go back all the way to your start as an entrepreneur. I was wondering, in your case, was it a calling? Was it something that chose you? When did you decide that you're going to follow an entrepreneur career?
The entrepreneurship career was something that came upon me. My first project of my own was to create a piece of software that helps bridge players practice better. I was not very successful at creating a startup around it, but it was a fascinating programmatic task. I was 14 or 15 back then. My first commercial startup came a bit later when I was 20ish. And that was an activity in Paris. We started a peer-to-peer electrical supply wholesale website, which at the time was a big innovation. And ever since then, it has been rolling in my destiny and me going along with it. I started as a coder. I did computer science in Tel Aviv University. I did business administration. So slowly I moved away from the technical tasks into commercial tasks and later on managing teams. But I've always kept my eye on new ideas and doing things differently.
I think this is, the mindset that is very typical for entrepreneurs nowadays, especially in the technology sector. I was wondering, why technology? What actually, motivated you to follow or start your career exactly in this field? I mean, now you can combine it with the business background that you already have. But why tech?
I'll tell you, when I really woke up for technology, that was even earlier than my bridge program. I was probably 8 or 9 or 10. And it was my father, who was a mathematician, who brought the first PC home. And I was in awe. I loved playing games like most kids at my age. But pretty soon I got bored with playing games and I thought, how can I actually make a game? It turned out to be quite difficult, but it didn't stop me from trying. So I had some naive attempts to make graphics and sound and things like that on these ancient computers. And my passion for technology just grew out of that.
You were born here in Bulgaria. You studied in Tel Aviv. You had a startup in Paris. And what was the next stop?
The next stop was Brussels.
Brussels.
That's right.
What did you do in Brussels?
In Brussels, I was one of the early employees of an Israeli startup, and this time a really big one, or it turned out to be a really big one because it was acquired by Hewlett-Packard for 4.5 billion.
Wow.
That was pretty impressive back in those days. Nowadays, 4 billion acquisition is kind of normal, but back in those days, that was one of the more sizable deals of those years. And we were extremely agile, extremely fast. We were working on the global market with a relatively small team. We were less than 100 people when I started. We were less than 1,000 people when we finished. And that inspired me to the power of technology to really transform not only an industry, but perhaps a society. Because at those days, I was in close touch with Israel, and I could see how high technology literally transforms a society from more industrial into a leader into the world of technology at par with San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Actually, in those days, if Silicon Valley had about 4,000 startups, the Tel Aviv scene had about 1,000. So it was unparalleled anywhere else in the world. That was in the years of the dot-com boom and the years afterwards. And nowadays, we see a drive throughout the world to emulate this model and create hubs for technology anywhere where there are a lot of smart people with technical education. Needless to say, my inspiration, along with this community here, is to turn Sofia into a sizable hub for innovation as well.
Which brings us probably to the next step. I mean, I know that in between you've been also living in Switzerland, and I guess you've seen also a society developed at a very different level than the Bulgarian one. But I don't want to go into that. We often compare ourselves to Switzerland, and I think it's pointless because it's like worlds in between. But let's move to the next stop. So investing in technological companies here in Bulgaria, and especially product companies. So we know that the ecosystem started as an outsourcing destination. Now slowly we're developing this product thinking. And one of the factors that have been pushing this development further is the capital. You've been part of this ecosystem. You were an investor. What led you into this mission? Was it what actually brought you back here in Bulgaria to invest in smart people who have talent for technology, the so-called digital intellectuals?
Well, I came back to Bulgaria already in 2007. And at that time, I still had my startup operation. And we were using Bulgarian talent throughout the world. But the investment part was still not matured in my mind. Yes, I think investing takes a certain maturity to be able to tell the potential of a team and an idea to become a global success. And for me, that maturity took quite a while to develop. I had to have my fair share of trials, successful and unsuccessful ones, to develop a certain sense or intuition. What are the ingredients of a successful startup team? Potentially successful.
Potentially successful. It's always good,
The success rate in our business is abysmally low. And that's part of the venture ethos. Mm-hmm. It's trial and error. The more you try, the more likely you are to succeed next time. So we've been trying to instill that ethos of trial and error in the tech community in Bulgaria as well. Europe is traditionally more conservative space. Unlike the United States, failure is not easily tolerated in Europe. If you fail your company, then it's a shame. Whereas across the ocean, failing is part of your learning experience. And in the past 10 years, we've seen Europe move along this way quite quickly, actually. And Bulgaria is coming along very well as well.
Oh, really? So, because I have still, the feeling that we in Bulgaria are pretty much ashamed of our failures. We don't want to speak about it. We try to push this topic here in the conversation because I believe it's very important. Peter Sage was recently, a guest at the podcast, and he said that the mistakes and your failures are actually your biggest capital.
They are, and they are your learning experience. They're the things you can talk about, the things you derive new conclusions and new directions. There's not much to talk about success. You enjoy it, but you rarely learn something out of it. Mm-hmm. So cherish failure and take all you can from it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and I say that because I'm part of this ecosystem, your career as an investor has been put to a stop now. because you decided to contribute to society in a different way. You joined We Continue Change just recently.
That's right.
You are also very present in the media. Tell me about the decision. Was it difficult to get away from, the business world, from your investment career? I know that you've been doing a lot of successful steps.
It was extremely painful on a very personal level. We have created, along with my partners, a venture fund that has been putting significant funds into Bulgarian engineered startups that play on the global scene. We want to believe that we are well on track to create the first Bulgarian unicorn. And time will tell, hopefully not that much time, whether this happens or not. This investment career has been a very rich learning experience for me. And I felt a lot of gratitude for being able to create such a powerful movement here, or rather to be stepping on the shoulders of others who started it and being able to contribute. Stepping away from this personally was a really difficult decision. And it was very hard. It took a while, but once I made the decision to stop venture capital and move into politics, I have been enlightened with a feeling of clarity that I haven't felt for a long time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Clarity. Tell me about it, because from the way I'm standing, politics in this constellation in Bulgaria at this point seems to me rather very complex, actually complicated. You're supposed now to have answers to so many issues that we're facing, and you're meeting also with the people in person.
Let me perhaps take the conversation one step back to the transition. For the past few months, I was helping the technical government that oversees the country between two elections. It's part of the Transparency Commission at the Ministry of Economy. Now, being there and witnessing the amount of corruption and mishandling that has been happening in the Bulgarian economy for the past decade has had a lot of transitory and transformational feelings amounting inside of me. And I should say not only inside of me, but inside the entire team that we brought on spot to conduct the work during these few months. All of us came with the idea that we are here to help temporarily, set the country, or at least the economic course, at a better direction, and then move back to our businesses. However, after a few months of witnessing the literal decay of the economic policies in the country, we had to step back and think very hard what to do. Because on the one hand, we had our wonderful careers on the one hand, and on the other hand, we saw that society put a lot of faith in this technical government. We saw the approval ratings, particularly led by Kirill and Asen, the two ministers of finance and economy, who led this effort of transformation during these short months. The approval ratings showed that the public is after something. The public is after change. And they really love the change that they led into the society for these very few months. So we thought long and hard, what do we do? Do we go back to our businesses and we let go? Or do we take this chance that society is giving us right now to start a movement that can perhaps move the needle and accelerate our economic development, which is also social development? Because the saddest fact that we saw is that we are actually in a rich country. And it's not a political statement, it's a fact. Financially, Bulgaria has a lot of money. It's just leaking out of the system through all kinds of holes, big and small, into each and every component of our society. And we thought, if we can stop the leakages, if we can stop corruption in a concentrated and synchronized effort across all ministries and the parliament along with it, this place will be radically different in 4 years from now.
You and I, we happen to share the same office, and I know that, every now and then we will have a short talk in this period when you were part of the Commission for Transparency. And I can, speak for myself, but I think a lot of people in our ecosystem have a similar mindset. We tend to look away from politics. We tend to look away from this situation. When I was part of the protest, at some point, I was so frustrated and I was so angry that I had to stop reading the news because I was at 6 o'clock in the morning when I opened I was already angry, and this didn't do me well. So I have a total respect that you actually, went through this process, and it was a transformation for you, which led you then to stepping in service for the society. Great. I admire that. I wouldn't be able to do that.
The choice will be with the voters in a month from now, whether we step in or not. We think we'll step in with quite a big role, but that's still a month away. Mm-hmm. And you have felt the beginning of what we felt. You felt that anger, that things are going wrong. In our tech community, we tend to look the other way because we have the luxury to look the other way. Mm-hmm. The tech community is export focused. Our business is worldwide. We have very little attachment to all the issues that are happening here. Our problems are mostly communal. The garbage is not taken care of. The sidewalks are cranky. The administration is still paper-based. These are minor problems. We are not really experiencing the problems of the common people all around us. And that has given us the luxury to look the other way for way too long. Mm.
We stay in our bubble, right?
We stay in our beautiful bubble, and we think that things will sort out themselves. I was in that bubble. My colleagues in the team were in that bubble, and it's a very comfortable bubble to be in. However, after a long period where nobody else picks up the shovel and starts cleaning up, the moment when the opportunity arrives for you to do it and the calling is there, we asked ourselves, how are we going to look at ourselves in the mirror 20 years from now? We had a chance that we didn't take, or we had a chance and we did our best with it. It wasn't easy, but once we made that decision, the feeling was fantastic.
So it was a calling of conscience, in a way.
Absolutely. It was a calling of conscience after seeing so much damage being done that we just couldn't make any other choice, literally.
I'm now curious. So you have a lot of experience in the business world. You've been a founder. You have exited a couple of, successful businesses. You are an investor, having an overview of, the big trends that we see now in technology. How is this now helping you be a better politician on one side and maybe later on part of the parliament?
I'm not sure if it does.
Okay.
I'll tell you in a couple of months if it does. For one thing, I've spent most of my career negotiating with organizations worldwide in 5 languages, and that gives you certain exposure to the way things are done globally. But policy making and politics are a very different thing to a company, and they require a lot of empathy to understand the feelings of people around you. You need to feel what the community feels and being able to respond to it, actually. That's probably the biggest asset for a political person these days. If you can relate to the public, they will feel back and respond. I can tell you that now that we are touring the country by bus to meet all these big and small town communities everywhere, we have people approaching us at various ages and telling us, guys, you're our last hope. We've been waiting for you for 15 years. We understand that you're not experts in everything that the economy needs, but we feel that perhaps you have the potential to start that change, to continue that change that you showed us for a few months in this technical government. So please do it, because if you don't, we have no hope. we will fly away and join our sons and grandsons and granddaughters in Germany, UK, US. We are desperate. And that emotion is very inspiring, but also instilling a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few weeks after we started the whole thing.
Yeah, that I can imagine. That sounds like a very humbling experience. But the thing that you're actually mentioning, you might not be the experts in all the fields, but we somehow trust you that you're going to continue this change. Isn't that the entrepreneurial mindset that we've been, talking about here in the in the Recursive podcast? Because I think I know very little entrepreneurs who started their own business knowing what it's going to be about. It's more like this mindset, ready to walk the line.
If you are implying that if we knew what's ahead of us, we wouldn't have started, you may have a point.
Okay.
You may have a point. To the extent that we are willing to do things differently and sometimes radically differently, yes, I think we have a very fresh approach to policy and politics in this country. And probably that's what people like about us most of all. We have the courage to say things as they are. We have the courage to instill change, and we proved it for a few months. We are not dependent on corruption that has been happening in the system for a very long time, which is associated with politicians in general and their history in the country. And that gives us a certain degree of freedom to operate. I think people feel that, and that's their biggest hope.
Do you think you can run a country as a startup? Sorry for the provocative question, but...
It is. A country is not a startup, and you cannot run it as a startup. A country is a social contract between a group of people that govern everybody else on their behalf with certain understandings what they need to provide as a service. In that sense, the country has economic objectives, which are business-like. But then, on the other hand, the country has equally big social objectives, which have nothing to do with the entrepreneurial or the business world we are in. And this is a very important thing to realize. Hence, we have been very diligent at declaring the thesis of our movement, right policies with left results. In other words, we need to take care of economic growth because that's the only thing that's going to pull this country into economic greatness. But on the other hand, we don't need to leave anyone behind below the poverty line.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of economic growth, this is like a common subject that we're discussing, not only here in the podcast, but I think we're discussing it quite often in the startup ecosystem. Is that so? The tech scene in Bulgaria was mostly kicked off by the BPO industry and the IT outsourcing industry, and now we have accumulated certain knowledge, and we develop more and more product thinking. We're not quite there yet, I would say, but we are still, getting there. And what do you think do we need to do as a ecosystem, or maybe also on a governmental level, so that we become an innovation hub which can compete with others on a global scale? I mean, you pointed out the experience and the lessons that we can learn from Tel Aviv, still, very far away from there.
You've highlighted the history of the tech sector here quite well. We started from outsourcing, moving into more sophisticated outsourcing and outsourced coding. And now we're reaching the stage of product startups, which is fantastic. That's where the unicorns are going to come from. Now, to move to the next stage and become even better and more successful at that, we need to invest in education.
Okay.
This is a radically missing link in our public policy. In fact, it's a miracle that our tech sector is where it is, given the state of education in Bulgaria. As a point of difference, Israel, again, has been investing over 4% of its GDP into pure R&D, so pure research and development programs for decades. Many of these efforts fail, but they generate human capital, which is very, very, very smart. And when you accumulate a lot of very, very smart human capital, this is where you can start creating companies that are based on intellectual property advantages of a different magnitude. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about developing R&D skill set, which is at the next level. In other words, Bulgaria as a country needs to put an emphasis now on repairing both the basic technical educations, the STEM education at schools, the STEM education in universities, as well as PhD programs, because this is the pyramid that ultimately creates that know-how here locally. Mm-hmm. And then you will see startups with significant IP approaching Bulgaria or being created here. That's the path.
I can only agree. I just recently watched again a documentary about Silicon Valley and how it all started. So we have one thing in common with Silicon Valley. Both started with HP in a way. But there is a huge difference in this Stanford University. I think you've been also part of the programs of Stanford University. At some point, you also saw and have been, observing the Silicon Valley. The models that we see there, to what extent can we apply them here in our reality? Are they going to work like that?
Not directly.
Okay.
I've visited Stanford. I haven't studied there, sadly. Okay. Did a short course in Harvard, but that's a different thing. Yeah. On the copying of the Silicon Valley model, I don't think we really need to. We have most of the ingredients here. And if we push the education angle, we will get there. Mm-hmm. The ingredients are clear. There have been attempts to replicate it around the world. They involve top education. They involve government spending in R&D. They involve enterprise R&D. Bulgarian companies are spending very little money on research and development. Most Bulgarian companies, not the tech companies, but the big enterprises, are doing very little research here.
Okay.
And that's not the way it should be. They should be also a motor and generator of new ideas, new products, new science.
Why do you think is that? I hope that, some of those leaders are watching us. I know also from my experience that some of them tried and they failed trying because the structures of the, who are supposed to do the R&D, they're also not adopted to the business world. So we need to create this bridge and this. We're missing the translators.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Ministries in government are very siloed. They don't talk to each other. Part of our plans is to create a much closer communication between those ministries, horizontal communications where the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Economy, if you like, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they're all talking the same language. So they can develop the human capital in the country, the economic capital in the country, and we can talk about it abroad as well so that the world knows that things are happening here in the right way. So that level of coordination has been missing for many decades, and it's time to start changing that.
Yeah. You've been around, so you traveled the world, you speak 5 languages. I would actually say that you're a very good example of those internationally minded people that we need to grow this innovation ecosystem. And one of the maybe important factors to develop it to a stage where we would like to see it is exactly human capital. And it's not only homegrown, and homemade, it's also the ability to attract those bright minds from all around the world. How can we do that? How can we compete with others? You're in Sofia and in Bulgaria. What do we have to offer to them? Also researchers, by the way. Yeah.
This is the big game of modern society. You can create part of the human capital yourself, but inevitably you'll need to import some of that human capital. Now, why would smart people come to Bulgaria? Bulgaria is an extremely attractive place. We have adorable nature. mountains, seaside, plains, you name it. It's rare to have a combination of all these things here in one place. We have adorable climate. You can count on the fingers of on the fingers of one hand the number of countries where you have beautiful four seasons like we do. In Japan, people celebrate the blossoming of cherry trees. It's a whole festival that the whole world knows about Japanese cherries. We have gorgeous cherries everywhere around this country. Nobody celebrates that. So we have very little appreciation for our natural capital, if you like. And Bulgaria is very endowed with that. Hot springs, mineral water, whatever you want, we have it. Now, smart people like to be in beautiful places. That's what they enjoy. That's what they enjoy in California. That's what they enjoy in Florida. You find them in nice places because they can work anywhere. The second thing they like is to have a controlled environment where they can operate in peace. And that means providing basic social services like education for their kids, health for themselves, for their families, perhaps for their parents if they bring them along. And these are basic social services that we need to fix for the entire population of this country. But foreigners who come to work here will enjoy them. Right now, both of these are challenging. If you are a foreigner and you need to place your family here, education is an issue, health is an issue. Once we solve these, I'm sure that there will be throes of smart people willing to relocate to Bulgaria.
Okay. I can actually agree. I mean, you spend time abroad, I spend time abroad, and we are both actually here by choice. Yeah. Why did you choose to live here? I mean, you had all the opportunities to go anywhere in the world.
I think it's precisely the reasons that I mentioned so far. Now, there is one more personal reason, and that is the children that we had. When we had two little kids in Switzerland, my wife and I started noticing that they come back from the kindergarten speaking Swiss German.
Oh,
and we thought, what a wonderful, smart kids we have. They will be bilingual. No, they were not bilingual. By the age of 2, they were totally Swiss German speaking. And we said, hold on a second. We looked at all our friends in the neighborhood, and we saw that most of their kids who are grown up are completely detached from Bulgaria, from our values, from the way we think, from the way we see and we perceive the world. And with my wife, Violetta, we thought long and hard, do we really want to grow up two nice little civilized Swiss kids, or we want to have two nice little Bulgarian kids that we can relate to on the very basic values that make you a Bulgarian from what you are to be here? And you know the answer to that. We packed our bags and we came here.
And I'm sure that many people along the way told you that you're crazy, just like they told me that I'm crazy, and you're going to be sorry for this decision.
They certainly did. They did not understand our decision emotionally, perhaps rationally. But now we are really grateful for that decision because we have a wonderful family that feels attached to this beautiful place that we love so much.
Mm-hmm. I know that your wife is also very successful in business. Can you maybe also give us some, like, your best advice on how do you make this work, this double career couple?
It's very intense for family purposes.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is a brilliant executive. She spent also time in technical government. She was deputy Minister of Economy, and recently she was Deputy Minister of Finance. She prefers the expert and the technical roles, and she's been excelling at that, but that comes with a lot of toll in terms of family time and how you operate as a family. You need a lot of understanding on both sides and a lot of effort to make it work.
So it seems that understanding and empathy is going to be, your most valued skill for the future, also in politics. Yeah.
I think in politics that takes you a long way forward. Now in this month that we've been touring the country and meeting all groups of people and all walks of life and all kind of businesses, the most dear thing they can get is someone to listen to, someone that understands them, who empathizes with them, and offers them a path to resolving those issues in the future. This is the most important thing they look in a politician. And it's pretty rare, actually.
How do you develop this yourself? I mean, how do you become more sensitive to other people? How do you learn to listen?
In my case, I think it's 100% credit to my wife, who taught me how to empathize with other people and understand what motivates, what drives them, what's their fear.
We're coming now to the final question, and I'm very curious about your answer, especially now that you've been through this transformation from business into putting yourself in service of society. What do you want to be remembered for?
I'm not even sure that I want to be remembered, but I mostly want to see my contribution in terms of radically changing the international perception of what Bulgaria stands for.
I'm sure that with your international experience, the languages that you're speaking, you'd be actually a very good fit for that. Thank you, Daniel Worrell. Thank you for being part of the podcast, and thank you also for your honest answers. I'm sure that this is tricky in your new position. I hope to see you as authentic as you were today with us also in the future, and wish you lots of success.
I really appreciate this invitation, Irina. Thank you.
So, Dani, we're coming now to the Blitz round, and I'm going to start a sentence. You're going to finish it to your liking. I love working in tech because
I meet a lot of smart people.
I run for parliament because
I would like to make a change in this country.
I start my day with
brushing my teeth.
It's always a good start, yeah. What makes me laugh is
my 9-year-old daughter telling me her school day.
Oh, I hope this happens every evening when you come back. The last book I read was
Yuval Harari's Sapiens.
My smartest decision was to
get married.
Good. My worst decision was
there were quite a few. I'm not sure which one to pick up.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you reflect on that. My mission in life is to
My current mission in life is to make a change in Bulgarian society.
Tune in next week for the Recursive podcast. Irina meets with the co-founder of Qualitas and FlowX, Ioan Jacob.
You're contributing to society. Yeah, if you think work is just a way of getting money, that's just so fucking wrong, right? Like, you shouldn't work just to make money. That's prostitution. What you do and what you work and how you contribute to society is who you are.
And if you are just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.